Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to Poets of the East. My good friend and most esteemed colleague, Mr. Michael Sindler, a poet of great presence, a poet of a dry wit, and a great spiritual depth. Okay? And Michael, I have a series of questions I'd like to ask you. Answer which ones you want, ignore which ones you don't, and let's have a little fun, okay?
Okay.
So, first question. Some poets start when they're kids. They love to draw and scribble and write stories and stuff. And some people didn't start until, hey, COVID. Uh, in that great spectrum of time and of interest, when did you start writing?
I am in the started way back. I think it's impossible to say I became a poet without talking about the incredible influence of my parents and particularly my mother. My father loved poetry and he actually wrote some as well
No
and
kidding. That's
turned me on to stuff. But my mother, on the other hand, just had this amazing, expansive um, repertoire that she could just recite at will and just in any situation, as a little tiny kid, even, I'd be doing something and she'd like recite lines from some major
cool.
thing. So I always thought of poetry as part of life.
That's wonderful, my friend. I'm so happy for you. That's an experience not many of us get. And
No,
and
I'm very lucky. I appreciate it.
bravo, bravo. Okay, next question. Think back to your earliest influences. Were there people, were there authors that you really thought, man, that is cool? Do you remember some of the earliest authors you appreciated?
Well, I mean,
That's
obviously
Mom and Dad.
A. Milne, but the first thing that I really remember, and again, this goes back to my mom, and there are other like Kipling and stuff like that, but I remember sitting on my mom's knee, actually on a staircase, and she's just reciting from memory, Mother to Son by geez, and my mind just goes blank. Uh, Langston Hughes.
Langston.
Okay.
Super.
So
So let's set this up
let's
again.
go.
So who was that first author that really comes to mind?
Okay. As I say, more than anything else, I remember sitting on my mom's knee and we're actually on a stairwell in our house. And she is reciting from memory Mother to Child by Langston Hughes, which life for me ain't been no golden stair. And growing up in small town South Carolina and having a parent with that kind of awareness of what it was and taking the time to teach their tiny child, that kind of reality
That's
and
marvelous, man.
yeah.
That is totally awesome. My my parents, my mom was the more mid-literate and artistic one. She was heavily into the arts, but my father, from his Eastern European heritage, he thought, let's say, I don't think he could think less of artists, as a matter of fact.
Uh,
But that's everybody has their own trip. So, next question: did your teachers, those early teachers of yours, were they encouraging or discouraging? I imagine they were encouraging.
Actually, I did. I mean, typically it was, the art teachers and the English teachers loved me, and others didn't because I was sort of a problem kid from very early on, especially after fifth grade. I was a mess, but English teachers would go bend themselves backwards to find ways to help me out, and they also were incredibly helpful as far as my poetry, were very positive about it and made it very clear and made that very clear to my parents
That's
how much
awesome,
they
man.
appreciated it. Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. That's very cool. Now, did you write for school papers and yearbooks and stuff like that?
I did not. The only thing I ever had sort of like that, and this the state arts organization sent like poet to the schools, and we did a thing. And I, along with a few other people, mostly my friends, because we were the artistic ones, got in this anthology. So it was like the first thing I ever was published in at like the age of 15. But other than that, no, I most of my stuff was more like graffitied on walls and stuff like that.
That's funny. Okay. Next question, sir. Now, many of us, especially those of us who were just enamored of writing and reading and all that, at a certain point in time, we started thinking of ourselves as, if not a writer per se, a proto writer, or someone whose goals included writing. Do you remember when you kind of did that shift?
Um, well, again, I don't think there was ever a time when I really didn't think of myself as a writer and as an art, more to the point as an artist. And I never really drew lines, for lack of a better way of putting it, between arts.
That's one of those art jokes, right?
That's yeah. Be here till Tuesday, try the veal. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I always thought of myself as an artist, even as a little tiny kid, and as a writer as part of that. Yeah.
Okay, so were you involved in other arts? Obviously, painting. Were you art oriented, drawing, sketching, painting, music, or were you primarily writing and
Well,
art?
at 7 years old, I was vice president of Sculptured Concrete Products Company.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
because my father was a sculptor, and
Ah, nice.
so I got put to work helping, schlepping concrete and doing all that stuff and bending
Oh,
wires and
kidding.
everything on armatures. And I also, the main thing is I would go with him to art festivals and craft fairs, and he would sit in the back of the booth and look cool and be sculpting away, and I'd be the little guy in front of the booth going, "This is my father, and he makes these things." So yeah, I
Oh, very
was I was
cool.
integral into the whole art process and the sales
So
process
you
for,
learned art marketing early on, huh?
oh yeah.
Wow, very
And
cool.
which worked out because I later became an art dealer for a number of years after college. Yeah.
Neat, neat. What did you study in college?
Well, my undergraduate degree is basically I took art history and I took fine arts. So I should have had a double major, but in my university, the two departments hated each other. So you could not get a double major. It was just not allowed. So I had to pick, and I went, well, maybe art history I'll make some money out of, having fine arts major is not going to do me any good financially. And again, it was a good move because it did help me get a job as an art dealer, which
Let me ask you
was
this. As a student of art history, is there it's one of those, like, which of your kids do you like best? But is there an era of art or a style of art or an age of art that really appealed to you? Say Egyptian or Greek or the Renaissance or you know quote modern art from the turn of the last century.
well, I mean, I do love every period of art, but once again, and it's like probably like one of those defining moments of life, and had to do with my tendency to get in trouble in class and get sent to the library, which was a very regular thing, which I think I'll
Wow, how
have
cool is
in a
that?
point. I think I'll have in a poem coming up talking about that. But so I was in the library, and I was just looking through art books, and I pulled this one book out, and it was one of those Time Life series of World of, and it was the World of Marcel Duchamp. And
Ooh,
the book changed my
Good
life
stuff.
forever. Because, I mean, it's like, and Marcel Duchamp has been, by far the most profound influence on me in pretty much every possible way ever since that moment in my life. And, as, in college, as an art history major, pretty much every single major paper I wrote was on some aspect of his work or how his work affected everything else or changed everything else. So that would be, fourth grade. All I wanted to do was be able to paint like Paul Klee or Kandinsky, which again, the other kids did not quite understand what I was talking about.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's funny. I decided that I wasn't going to read art history until I had a style. I thought
Uh,
once I have a style, then I'm going to do it. And it was, oh my God. I had always had a connection to the 20s and the 30s. I love that music from that era. It just knocks me down. But when I sort of came upon quote the modern art of the turn of the century, the 19 teens, the 20s, the 30s, uh, and as much as I love Duchamp, and I love him dearly, and really the absurdist part of that, I also have what I feel is an esoteric love of Man Ray's work as well.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, they were best friends too.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the thing about that is I've always had one foot in the arts and one foot in the sciences.
Hmm.
To me,
Perfect.
Man Ray is just
Yeah.
the perfect guy. And so I fancied myself in that kind of bag. Although I started playing music, I was fortunate. I started playing music in third grade, and 2 years ahead of my fellows, right?
Yeah.
And I had, like you had supportive teachers, I had a supportive principal. She insisted that every first grader at her school got to go to the Pittsburgh Philharmonic to a classic Baroque hall
Mhm.
built in the late 1800s, right?
Nice.
And I here I go to this, and of course, pop music was what I heard in my house. But so I go there, right, and I'm listening to this, and it killed me. It just knocked me down, and I'm sitting there weeping with Tchaikovsky coming from the stage, right? I'm just weeping, and the principal comes over. She goes, "Ricky, what's wrong?" And I go, "It's so beautiful." And she
Yeah.
goes, "Yeah, but what's wrong?" And I go, "It's so beautiful." So you know what that dear woman did? She made sure that I got to go every time a class went to the Philharmonic. I got to go. It was I owe her so much. It's just amazing. So I really appreciate what you did and what you got, and God bless you for it, brother. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I gotta love those Russians. Yeah. They absolute, it's like when I was a kid, same thing. I mean, the Beatles and all that. But I mean, my parents pretty much they really loved classical music, and that's more what they would play. But the very first music that ever totally just blew my mind, and the first real music I remember listening to was Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, and that was it. Probably has a lot to do with why I ended up loving Frank Zappa and Beefheart and stuff like that. Man, it's
Oh,
like
absolutely.
into the Discord from the beginning,
I
so
I was a horrible snob. I never liked pop music, right? Until a dear friend of mine, a fellow trumpet player, introduced me to Frank Zappa, and I went, "Oh my God, there is something redeemable about, should we say, at least contemporary?" Because Frank, to call Frank pop is really a bit of a stretch.
he
But
used pop as part of the potion.
yeah, yeah. Well, he and I blame him and Jim Morrison for unleashing my poems and my poetry. But that's a
Again, that was the next thing that really blew my mind was the Doors' first album, and at the exact same time, Cream Disraeli Gears, especially Tales
yeah.
of Brave Ulysses. I
Oh my
heard
God.
those, and again, that just cracked me open as both musically, and I was like, all of a sudden, I was a rocker, and also, as a poet, just completely, profoundly. Yeah.
Okay, next. Um, Now, you were talking about working professionally in the art gallery arena. Um, Now, were you also showing your own work or developing your own work for sale, or was that really, kind of that was your commercial life, and then separately from that was your art life?
I did not sell a lot of stuff. I showed some stuff a little bit. Uh, my work was sort of at this point where other dealers didn't really know exactly where I fit as far as whether I fit what was really starting to be a very big thing at that time, because this is the mid 80s, and the whole idea of the naive, and then there's the neo-expressionists, and my work sort of fell between the two. Uh, and so yeah, but I always never really worried about having somebody else show my work. I found alternative ways to do it, and that's how I've always sort of done it, guerrilla style. Um, but you know, I was a lot more interested at that particular time in just making work than I was in showing it. I was too busy selling other people's stuff.
Now, there's another thread that I want to pick up with you because I've always appreciated this aspect of you as well. It seems to me there's a strong spiritual side in Mr. Sindler's work. And I'm curious, when did, should we say, an interest in Eastern or an interest in Buddhist or an interest in the larger spiritual world come to Mr. Sindler?
Um, that is a good question. Again, my father would not have considered himself spiritual. He was very much more a moral ethicist. And while I'm sort of tribally Jewish, and my mother considered herself Jewish, but I was really more brought up in the Unitarian Church, which was very much about the idea of everything being valid, and also, my parents were way cool in the fact that they made it a point as a little kid to send me off with all my friends to on various Sundays to their churches and whatever places of worship. So I would get a sense of what it was like to worship in all these different places and be able to see the differences and see what was the same, which I just thought was amazingly cool of them. And then I guess sort of as a young teen in my early hippie days, friend turned me on to Ram Dass, and that
Be
was
here now.
huge, huge influence. And that I think in the long run really did have a lot to do with my ending up living on an ashram for a number of years later in life. Um, Basically, through a large part of the 90s and the early 200s. And yeah, living on the ashram obviously had a lot to do with refining, shall we say, my sense of purpose as far as that, and what karma and dharma really mean, as opposed to this silly idea of what goes around comes around, which is not true. Uh, if it did, we wouldn't have somebody for running for president right now, because things would have come back around to him already. But
We, I had the good fortune to have an interest in consciousness quite early. I was raised Catholic and managed to get myself physically thrown out of the Catholic Church. At my confirmation, I've been thrown out of class a lot because I asked impertinent questions or questions that were so deemed. So I never heard that as part of our church, you were supposed to kiss the bishop's ring as part of your confirmation, right? So I'm in this line of kids going up to get confirmed, and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, you know, everything I know about Jesus doesn't say that. Everything I know about consciousness doesn't say that. Everything I know about America, you don't kiss somebody's fucking ring. That's been done. It's no, it's monarchy, it's priestcraft. Forget about it. So when it was my turn, I shook his hand instead of kissing him, and he puts it in my face and said, "Kiss it." In a voice that you really wouldn't want to hear from a priest. You wouldn't expect it. I didn't. And when I shook it again, in front of the entire congregation, he orders me out of the church, right? Which put an end to my Catholic education. But I took an oath. I said I wanted to read every book of God. I wanted to read what God had in mind for humans. So I read really widely. And the other thing it seemed to me was, because I was interested in neurology, because I was interested in thinking and consciousness and what was possible and communicating with animals and all that, I decided I would look at all these different schools. I was growing up in the late 60s, early 70s, and there were a lot of yoga schools and consciousness schools and esoteric this and that and ESP and from Silva mind control on down the line. There was all kinds of stuff. So I began interviewing these people and finding out what their gig was and what techniques they offered. And I found that these had similarity in all this stuff. And I ended up running a school of meditation using Be Here Now as its basis. And just to wrap this into a little bundle, Ram Dass came to Miami. Now, Ram Dass in Miami is an interesting paradigm, but anyway, he's there. So when we heard about it, I literally went to buy tickets that day, right? The first day I heard about it, but I was told the local occult bookstore, oh, sorry, sold out. But they promised there would be tickets available at the gate. So for a 1 o'clock lecture, we were down there at 7:30 in the morning, right? Myself and my students, and we're waiting there. And I thought, rather than just sit here and fritter our time away, let's chant Om. Let's build up a vibe, man. Let's really, change and transform this space. So we started chanting, right? So we're chanting and chanting and chanting, and the vibe really started working, and people were joining in and all that. So this, the crowd line forms, right, ready to get in. So when the door finally, they're there to get the tickets, they said, no, sorry, sold out. So my students are like, Rick, damn, man, we came down here with you and it was supposed to happen. I said, look, maybe something miraculous will happen. Maybe it won't. Maybe not going is as important as going. I said, but I'm suggesting that we be open to this. Perhaps something amazing will happen. Well, long story short, a friend came over and she said, Rick, I was just out west at a retreat the Navajos held, and I got these peyote buttons. Would you like some? Well, of course, I'd like some. And we continue the oming. All this time, we're still oming, right? Well, the crowd goes in, and half my students left. It's okay. It's what you got to do. Do what you got to do, But then soon we see a tall figure in a saffron robe walking down the sidewalk. Ram Dass stops at our little circle, and he goes, oh, I've been greeted a lot of ways. This is very cool. Okay, let's go in. And I said, well, sir, as a matter of fact, there's no room in the inn. He said, well, look, let me see what I can do. He goes in, comes back out. He's talking to the proprietor. No, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. There's just no room. So Ram Dass goes, you know what? You all come with me. We sat with him on the stage for the satsang.
That's very Ram Dass, actually. I went and saw Ram Dass in South Carolina, and afterwards, this little like vegetarian restaurant thing and bar was having a little reception, and we were there. And of course, all of my friends, we were all tripping our brains out. And this one friend of mine who had senses kind of flipped out, and I don't really deal with him anymore. But he walked up to Ram Dass and he goes, "I want to be where you are." And Ram Dass just looks at him and goes, "You are." It's just like blew my friend's head, and I was just like, "Woo." But yeah, it was just classic Ram Dass. He was just, radiated beautiful energy, but just absolute, no pretension, no nothing. Yeah, yeah. It was like I can see where you would land up on the stage.
Yeah. Okay, next question, sir. I I've always wanted to talk to you about these matters. You've always struck me as a being who spent some time in the universal mind, to put it simply. And I've always wanted to talk to you about that. And it's an honor to speak to you, my friend. Next question. Um, do you remember beginning to perform poetry?
Um, Again, sort of weird because, like I say, I was in small town South Carolina, and there's this whole thing about how, graffiti and rap and all this stuff, how it started in the late 70s in New York. But like my friends and I, we were like running around doing graffiti, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that we were tripping all the time, but we would sort of just walk around doing improvisational
Sure,
poetry
sure.
and rhyme just like all the time. And this is,
Yeah,
1972 and stuff. And so, and I was already starting to actually, write at that point. That's really when I started to actually sort of write poetry. I was right around 72 or so.
cool, cool.
Um, but yeah, yeah, we were tuned in a lot more than people thought little small town South Carolina was.
Okay, next. Um, from the current poetic space, let's say, when you began participating in these international Zoom things, probably with the onset of COVID and all, um, has there been anything about these Zoom experiences that surprised you?
Well, I mean, it totally changed my life. It's been, and I'm incredibly sorry that we had to live through, the pandemic, and COVID's a terrible thing. But for me personally, I'm uh, sort of pretty much a hermit, and I very rarely leave my apartment or anything, and I haven't for years. And I actually, the whole reason I got back into writing, I'd quit writing pretty much entirely for a decade, and had just sort of really shelled myself off until I went down to the public library 3 blocks down the street from me, and took part in this incredible generative workshop called Hard Times that Lighthouse Writers Center here in Denver, lighthousewriters.org, all around the world, um, does. And, you know, from the first moment, I was just like, I'm home. And, and you can almost, count on your hands the number of times in the last, since 2016, and with the exception of when it stopped for the pandemic, and then it went to Zoom. So I was doing that. But then when, all these things started happening in Zoom, it's like, wow, things are coming to me. So, welcome to my world, and it was, it wasn't like the hardship it was for other people. It was this like, wow, I got people here. Come on, my peeps. And so yeah, it was really the most wonderful thing in a lot of ways that's ever happened to me. And now I spend pretty much my entire life in this chair, unless I'm sleeping right over there. Um, and I'm either doing generative workshops or doing open mics all around the world, several times a day, every day. And yeah, it's just been absolutely wonderful. And as far as meeting other people, I mean, I wouldn't be here doing this with you. Um, Brian Franco in Maine, and Dane Ince in San Francisco. The three of us have sort of become this weird little trio that call themselves the Beardo Bards of the Bardo. Uh, that obviously would not happen. Otherwise, I've been lucky enough to become the Beat Poet Laureate of Colorado through the New Beat Foundation out of Connecticut. Deborah Killjoy. No, Kilday. Kilday. Yeah. Who is just been just an amazing, amazing advocate for poets, and especially, keeping up the spirit of the beat poets. And, you know, how would I have, even known these people, much less, been able to, be honored like that, which I'm not sure I deserve it, but I'm happy it happened. Um,
Trust me, you deserve it, brother. You deserve
yeah,
it. I met a
it's,
poet or two.
yeah, but so yeah, I mean, it's my life is incredibly rich and full because of this whole Zoom universe, and just I mean, I know people all over the world that I see at different places all the time, every day. It just blows my mind.
Next question, sir. Yeah, there's kind of let's say there's a range of experience. Some poets write only from inspiration. Other poets believe you should write every day, whether or not there's inspiration to polish your craft, and that's a big spectrum. Where do you fall in that spectrum? Are you a I got to write every day kind of guy, or are you a like, well, when inspiration hits me, or somewhere in between? Where do you fall?
I should be writing every day, but don't actually do it kind of guy. That's where I'm at. I absolutely think those people are right. And if you have the discipline to do it, it is going to help you, and you're going to almost certainly become a better poet, and you will certainly at least have more stuff to choose from and to, revise from, because revising is so much of actually being a poet. And you can't revise a blank page, as they say. And so yeah, I and then again, that's why I try and do several generative workshops a week. As I say, I did one today. I wanted to do another one, but that didn't work out. I usually do
For
at least
people that
five.
don't understand the term generative, how would you explain what a generative workshop is?
Generative workshop is a workshop where you actually do writing. The way most of them work, not all, but as a general rule, especially on Zoom, you go to it, there's a facilitator, and typically the facilitator will give a prompt or series of prompts, and you write to those prompts. Some of them, Tumble Words out of El Paso, which is a fantastic one. Uh, they have a very strict rule that everybody writes, everybody reads. And so when you're done writing, sort of goes in a circle, so to speak, or they number us, and everybody reads our stuff. Some places that want to be specifically more of a really safe space, so to speak, and don't, it's like you're welcome to come and you don't have to write, you don't have to read, whatever. But in general, everybody does go there to write. And so for the most part, yeah, you go in, you write, and then you share your stuff. And in some, there is so a little bit of critique, generally just positive. Some places there is the other side of that, and those are and then there are groups like that, which are critique groups, which are also very useful, where you bring your work that you've done and have people who you feel comfortable with and respect actually do critique of your work. And if you can find a good one of those, you're lucky, because it's a lot easier to find a nice generative workshop than it is to find a critique group that really works for you. But both of those are really good. And then you're ready to go to the open mics, and then you read your work and you share with a whole community of other people who are sharing their work. So it all works together, and so it's a beautiful synthesis.
Next question. Are there themes or topics that you find yourself returning to time and again?
Um, yeah, very much so. I mean, I used to rant a lot more than I do now. I've sort of, and actually the real point where I stopped ranting so much was 2020, when we finally got the horror at least out of the way, if not gone. And I just really decided I didn't want to be that. I really wanted to contribute more positively whenever possible. And, in general, I like to think the theme of my poetry, if there is one, is compassion. That's what I really like to write about, what I really like to try and share is how we can all, be more compassionate, and how important compassion is to the survival of everything, literally everything. Because if we don't learn how to have respect, not only for humans but for the planet and the universe, because it even goes out, we talk about, but now they want to mine other planets and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, there's a reason why they write dystopian fiction. But but yeah, so I mean that is really that, and as you said, within that, I try and write from a spiritual but not religious point of view. I'm not really a fan of religion. I'm a fan of spirituality. I think there's a pretty clear defining line between the two, which I won't go into, but but yeah, so that is really, I would say, more than anything else, what I write about. And I do write. I write a lot about nature in ways, and I I write my personal experience, but not so much. I tried. It's very easy to write about yourself and get hooked into that, and again, it's very easy to get caught up in ego when you're doing that, and when the whole idea of what you're trying to write is to get beyond ego to compassion. Probably not the best thing, especially when you're not necessarily the most modest person in the world. Uh, you try and go the other way. I guess that's the answer to that, is,
Thank you.
is I try and
Thank
write
you.
about compassion. Yeah.
Next question. Do you feel that poets have a responsibility to address societal issues?
Absolutely. Yeah. I won't say everybody has to, and you can't be a poet without it. There's no such thing, but I think as humans, yeah, we have a responsibility, whether we choose to accept it or not, to try and make the world a better place. And I think interpersonal interactions, which are few because I don't leave my apartment, um, sometimes try not to be a jerk on Zoom. Uh, and try and actually,
Oh, you're a success in that arena, my friend. You're
yeah,
very
I
much a
try and be a positive force. I try and, make people feel good about what they're doing, which is an important thing, because it's hard to get out there and actually read your stuff, especially when you're not sure about it, or there are people who are writing about incredibly traumatic experiences, and I want to make sure that, they understand, that they're heard and they're respected, and and we're there for them, and but yeah, I think that art is communication. Art is what happens between people, going back to my Duchamp thing. And if I want something positive to, happen between people, I need to be putting out the positive. And you can't expect that to be the case for everybody. There's going to be a lot of, negative poetry the same way there is, negative everything else. But worth trying to be as positive as we can.
Some of us are, absolutely.
We
Next
try.
question. Is publishing important? I don't ask easy questions to my poets.
Once again, I think that's an individual thing. I think for some people, they desperately want to be published, and there is, yes, it can be a huge ego boost. It can actually be a very positive thing to, get your stuff out to where it can have more impact. I personally worry about a lot of stuff that's being, places you get published where, 8 people read it and you buy a copy of it. So, it's like, it's like, is it really worth it? But sometimes you just do it because it's your friends and you want to be supportive. Um, but and then, and there is, like wanting to be published in places where there is um a wide readership or the type of readership you want to get. And a lot of times that's a lot harder because you might be sending a poem in that's up against 3, 4 thousand other poets for each issue of that publication. And, you have to just remember that, just because I didn't get in doesn't mean I suck. It means that I wasn't the one out of 3,000. Maybe next time. But yeah, I mean, I would like to potentially, like put out a volume or so of my poetry at some point, but I'm still not sure exactly what. I've got a bunch of different prototypes, so to speak, for things. And again, going back to, where to publish, I think that there are people who are publishing that I'm not too crazy about their particular practices and think that they sort of prey, for lack of better word, on the poets who they're doing. And then there are ones who have nothing but the highest ideals and are doing that. And within those, some of them are putting out great stuff and great poets, and some of them are actually putting them in ways where they actually can get sold, get them into bookstore, get them and stuff. And then they're the ones who, don't necessarily have the same sort of acumen sales wise. So again, you publish stuff and it lingers. So there are a whole lot of issues as far as that I try and
I think
weigh.
you have a unique perspective because having done some art marketing, you have a little more sophisticated analysis of that whole arena, I think. I
Well,
had an
I think also Lighthouse Writers Center, as I say, um, is, it's an incredible organization, and like so many of the faculty and staff and facilitators there are just incredible writers of all different stripes, and a lot of them have published and published in major things, and a lot of the visiting facilitators that they get, are some of the best people in the world. And I've been lucky enough to, take classes from some of the, greatest poets in the world, Ada Limon, on and on, and learn from them. And again, you can do that, go to lighthousewriters.org and you can look at the stuff, and they, have classes on, learning all this stuff about how the market really works. So yeah, I feel like that has a lot to do with my understanding of it more than anything, I ever learned before that, as far as, being an art dealer and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I just can't speak highly enough of what I've learned from Lighthouse Writers as far as that. I put
I had some interesting luck in my first publishing experiences. I had was writing commercial work for marketing and television, radio, and a lot of web work for engineers, architects, urban planners, and other things. And I thought, I'm finally gonna do it. I'm gonna commit myself to getting some writing out there. And I sold three technical articles to actually three different magazines, and had the funniest experience. All three magazines, after writing me a check, right? I got the check. All three went out of business. So, so I went, but damn, I mean, I got the money, so there's that part. But on the other hand, I wanted to see the damn stuff
yeah,
in ink, right? So then I thought, well, the other argument that you always hear is, find something that you'd like to read and pitch that.
yeah.
Well, there was a publisher who appeared on NPR a lot, a guy named Andre Kudrescu, who
Oh yeah.
published his thing called Exquisite Corpse. And I thought, you know what? By God, I'm gonna reach out to Andre. And I had just had a feature show at the Miami Book Fair, which is a very well attended 3-day book fair in Miami, and I was on the main stage and all that. So I thought this is the additional credential rather than just some crazy wacko poet, right? So I sent him some stuff, and I get this very nice letter back. Wow, this is really good. It's intelligent. It's articulate. You raise good points. You use great language. Fantastic. I'm going to be in Miami. Do you want to get together? And I thought, okay, awesome, super. And it turned out he was appearing at another event, a literary event in Miami. So we meet and have a cup of coffee. And I said, so Andre, I really appreciate that you like my work and you find it intelligent and funny and this and that. I said, so I'm wondering, is there room for a guy like me in your Exquisite Corpse? And he leans in and he said, Richard, you know who I'm featuring next month? And I said, I have no idea. He said, Margot Hemingway. I said, really? Margot Hemingway? Interesting. I've never heard of her writing. And he said, oh no, she can't write her way out of a wet paper bag. But you see, she's famous. And I went, really? And from hearing Andre Kudrescu, his commentaries on NPR, I had a rather respectful appreciation of what I thought was his literary judgment, right? And he goes, let me tell you about publishers. Most of us just want to be famous. So if the only way to get to be famous is to publish famous people, by God, that's what you do. So I'm telling you this, Richard, you get famous, by God, I'll publish.
That definitely sounds like him. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
thought,
we had a mutual friend who would tell me stories sort of like that about him. Yeah. A
yeah.
woman we were both very fond of.
Okay. Next question, sir. Um, what kind of reading are you doing right now for fun, for your amusement?
Sadly, almost none, because my brain doesn't work the way it used to, for reasons I won't go into. Um, and I am almost like, I cannot read a novel anymore. I used to read, almost a novel a day for most of my life, actually. I would just read constantly. and I'm just unable to do it anymore. So most of the reading I do is on screen, except for um, books I buy from my friends whose poetry I want to have and to read. And even those, most of them, I can't say I've read their entire books. I try and do, and I actually try and recite some of their stuff when I get a chance
You're a
on open
generous
mics
man,
too.
my friend. You are a
They
generous.
deserve it. They support me. I should support them. But yeah, so I do a pathetic amount of reading, which is bad because, as any good writer will tell you, the single best thing you can do to become a better writer is to read. And I know that, I appreciate it, but I pass out. So it's like you can only read so much when you're asleep, and I can't do audiobooks because I
Books,
just,
books under
my
the
mind
pillow.
wanders
That's
too much. Yeah, it's no, it's yeah, my mind just doesn't work that way.
so. For
So
my final question is a gift.
uh,
My final question is: do you have a question you'd like to ask me?
um oh man, you should have warned me.
No, no, never.
Oh man. What would you say is the single thing that inspires you most as a poet?
I have to say, because I am melancholy by nature, that is my default position. Okay.
Me too.
Eastern European man, my uncles would stand around and sing the saddest, heartbreaking tunes you'd ever want to hear in your life. So I have to say that my inspiration comes from the wonderful people that I've met, especially in the poetry community. Their souls give me every reason to try to keep that flame lit, hold that lamp high. I mean, we know a gentleman named Lantern Carrier. How amazing is that, right?
Can't be more positive than that.
I mean, you had time in the hippie arena, so did I. I knew Bear, I knew Mountain, I knew Rainbow, I knew this, I knew that. I did not yet know a man named Lantern Carrier. How wonderful. I even knew an Susanna. What a
Oh, I
wonderful
love it.
character she was. And but I find so much inspiration from the good people I've come to know through Zoom.
Oh yeah, I mean, just on and on to Gary Hutchinson. I mean, Kathy Carson, who's just the absolute essence of compassion. I mean, just and those are just a few Brits.
Sure, sure.
My buddy Dane. I just so many people. Even though my head keeps going over at all these Brits, Charlotte, Hockenberg, but yeah.
Next,
I mean,
next.
just so many incredible, beautiful, beautiful souls. Actually, oh geez, I'm blanking her name right now. She's like sort of the leading light of the Tesoro women, Stacy Dyson, who I was listening to do a feature earlier today. Oh my God, you know, wow, what a person. I mean, just fantastic human being. Um, Christina Hall, who used to do poetry in the Brew, and just David um,
So
Sidlock.
yeah.
I mean, just so many, just fantastic people who I am so lucky to have in my life. Yeah, that's a great, yeah, yeah. I love your answer.
Thank you, brother. Finally, the best part of the show, I get to ask Michael Sindler to read me some of his finest poetry, anything you want. And I especially want to urge you this. You know, too many times we have these 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute windows. Okay, you gotta do this one, and you want to do 4 or 5 because they're just freaking important to get across. You got 20, 30 minutes. Go for it.
Okay. Um, I thought, seeing how, especially, we talked about how this whole thing came about, this global poetry community, as I like to call it, came about because of the horror of the pandemic, and we don't always think about how many people we really did lose, but it's at least something good came out of it. I'd like to think. But this is a piece that I wrote right at the beginning of this. And I have to say I was very lucky with this piece. It got published in various places and got read in various places, and it's been very, very good to me. But it's called Within Walls. Microscopic menace meandering on the wind, hanging in droplets of life's sweet breath, invisible sentinels posted by the door, ready to pounce and possess. Even the most benevolent visitors, mail, meat, or grocery deliverers, are now suspect. All attempts to touch are forsaken, seen as tantamount to suicidal. We wait out elevators until solo passage is possible. And yet, once safely ensconced, one cannot escape the lingering passenger, despair, knowing many will not escape, scathed survivors, scattered ash. One cannot escape the flame of fury, the jowl burning bile of disgust, anger towards those who propagate and propel death through willful ignorance born in bigotry led disobedience. None are immune, and few are innocent, but care and compassion and the desire to hold on, to help and to hold together are what we have left. Hold these jewels dear. We are within walls, but love for all must radiate globally. We are in instead of out, but are all in it together. Be well. Hold on. There is more than minutes dancing on the wind. There is also hope. And hope can find a home wherever it is blown and wherever it lands. Let hope land on your tongue and dissolve, rushing towards your heart. Let yourself breathe hope into your lungs. Let it cover you head to toe. Let it be your food, your garb, your elixir. Let hope be your strength. Listen to it when it tells you to stay safe, when it tells you to keep others safe. Then spread hope, the opposite of disease, in whatever way you can. Use your gifts, your art, your will, and enthusiasm. Spread hope, give hope, be hope, abide in the shelter of hope with all humanity until the doors reopen. And while, I won't say we're completely safe, the doors have reopened, and we're still trying to spread hope. And so I'm going to go back in time here to my good old hippie days, and this one's called Damn Good Barbecue. We didn't drink the Kool-Aid, but we drank a lot of mushroom tea and ate a lot of damn good barbecue and ran laughing through the streets day and night. We danced and played and fucked and drank and slept wherever the spirit beamed and wherever we careened, and all too often with whoever was in the other half of the dream. We could have built a house from stems and seeds. We could have lived inside harmonies, but too much of a good thing will always end by crashing in run-down Victorians and a long string of shotgun shacks, making installations out of knickknacks and detritus that led to lots of nothing, which was perfect when you think about it. Sometimes even making art that literally flew away. It might have been nice to take a picture, but it doesn't matter anyway. It was all about the moment we let go. And going back to this idea, and it's sort of universal and timeless, but it's I think was especially strongly felt during the pandemic, the loss, and this is about loss, and it's called Holes in Space. Sweet child, as you look back in time to see the holes in space where friends and family should be, short lives that should have left longer shadows across experience, kisses, hugs, and lessons never shared, know that they would now embrace you in communion transcending span of days. These holes you see still let in light, pattern woven round them, stitches all to all, echoes flowering song, exhales sweet scent from memory and momentum. They are you, and you contain in you at least a part of them, those known to you or lost before your arrival. These holes may tunnel down to grief, but they fill with wonder. Oh, child, dear child, do not fear to peer deep and discover marvelous tales that mirror your new trail. Living loved ones may falter, falling into mourning, dipping arms into openings, attempting to pull last treasures from well of tears. Hold them tight. Do not allow them to fall in and be lost. An occasional drink of salt water passing lips will wake tired taste buds and summon reflection of shared feasts. But these waters of grief do not bubble up to be bathed in. Sweet little one, we wish, as all who have lost will always wish, you could have known or heard the singular spirit encased in each. Lost opportunity deprives us of the sweet and the tender, the hilarious and melancholy character each snuff candle's once dancing flame contained. Look into the eyes of the living behind puddling saline falls. That candlelight still flickers undimmed. Let them kindle and pass on the incandescence. Let the light that emanates from these holes in space that mark your past, that inevitably led to you now, stay strong. Sweet, dear, gentle child, be all the sum their lost promise allows. For you have life, and that is what their paid price bought, and you are worth it all.
Beautiful.
And another take on sorrow. This is called Beauty Hides. To take away the scar would leave another, less noticeable perhaps, but skin would itch in anguish, missing its past imperfection. Jagged patterns softened as surrounding skin sags, miniature mountain range mapped by dragging fingertip. Why pull down the markers? Why expunge monuments to sorrow's civilization? Why erase the history of the heart? No dull surgical edge could substitute. No layered line of flattened pink could leave less hurt. Let what is be. Let memory live on. Beauty hides within the scar. And this next piece is kind of special to me, as I say, at Hard Times Writers group that I fell into at the library. I really feel in many ways saved my life. And one of the people who founded it, Jane Thatcher, left to do other things. She's still doing wonderful stuff. And I wrote this for the last day. She was there with us and was able to read it to her. And so this is called Gentle Gardener for Jane Thatcher. And the epigram is, I visit the orchards of spheres and look at the product and look at quintillions ripened and look at quintillions green. Walt Whitman. Tending a garden of forgotten flowers, an unforeseen explosion of blossoming colors, seeds from far and wide, blown by rough winds in need of attention and gentle care, carefully, subtly, lovingly cultivated. every hue, shade, shape, and texture, thick-stemmed and thorned, and delicate strands, tall, strong, freestanding stalks, and gently creeping vines in needs of purchase, clinging for support against the elements. Week by week, roots watered and nurtured, turned sunward, steadied by well-placed supports, letting patterns play and form a harmonious whole, dazzling in its rich array of details, full of fragrance, evoking wisdom and desire. Without the effort of the gentle gardener, rare disparate blooms, oft seen as weeds transplanted from the far-flung wilds, could never have joined to become this interconnected, majestic maze of delight. Does it seem a simple act to prepare the ground and season by season harvest sweet fruits? It is not. We must give the gardener due praise, whose diligent, steady touch sensed in each plant unique potential and birthed a sweeter, better world. This is not the only garden to be thus blessed. Leaving these budding growths in others' capable hands, the gentle gardener now moves on to furrow new fields, to bring forth crop after crop of wonder and rapture, as this strong, sheltered oasis remains and thrives. Every future blossom and fruit bursting forth will owe its grandeur and radiance in part to the tender, green-fingered cultivator's loving labor. Spores will flutter off to land and grow in plots and tracks, each germination continuing the gardener's never-ending gift. Hands, heart, vision, and a few simple tools used well are all it takes the gifted to enrich shared experience. Exquisite gardens will grow, feeding spirit and soul, all indebted and thankful for the gardener's care. I got plenty more if you want me to keep
Sure, a
going.
couple more,
You can
absolutely.
always just edit out what you. This one is a very different take. It's called Hot Yoga Babe. I picked you up at the airport holding up a sign that read, Hot Yoga Babe. You had sent me handmade tickets to be cashed in for various erotic favors. We used the whole booklet. But outside the apartment, away from the bed, boredom sat between us everywhere we went like a third wheel. Nothing but the carnal evoked interest. By the end of the week, we were both more than ready to part ways. I drove you back to DIA. You told me you had inexplicitly never done it in a car. We checked it off the list in the parking lot, my parting gift, I suppose. It could have ended much worse. Last lust dissolved in farewell kiss. Your smile when you read Hot Yoga Babe, that's how I'll always remember you. I never saw you again, and that's okay. And a lot of people, when they talk about my work, they talk about how I like to work in form, and I have done tons and tons of form poetry. And so I thought I'd throw a sonnet in here. And this
Sure.
one is a sonnet for doomsday. Flowers bend under the weight of raindrops, bright colored petals caught in entropy, and yet they rise again when the rain stops, as if relenting storms have sympathy. The swinging scythe blade that so neatly chops the field when crops have reached their apogee is not unlike the blade that never stops in constant harvest of humanity. Mankind towards darkness wildly gallops in transit from to be to not to be. In truth, all we hold dear are merely props. From the cold grave, there are no escapees. Hope not to bloom again like leaves on trees, for rebirth will not be your destiny. And the first poem I read, Within Walls, like I say, that sort of was really helped as far as get me known, especially around here. And then this poem uh, was very much also helped me and got used in a lot of different ways and has been very, very good to me. It's called Color My World. Probably my best known poem, Color My World. First, color my world with the invisible, the essential, the incorruptible. Grab the widest of brushes and dip it deep into compassion, swirling it until every bristle is saturated. Make wild, sure strokes across the background of being. Cover it thickly, a viscous gesso, grounding all that will float and flow upon its surface. Let it dry slowly with the warm breath of love, freeing vapors of longing, rising and disappearing into waning clouds of thought. Sand it gently with empathy until its soft, smooth surface contains no crevice, crack, or outcropping in which the dusty particles of doubt may find purchase. And then color my world with all shades of human, every hue born from every clime. Color the world with cross-pollination of lovers who leave convention behind. Color it with the shade and shape of every tribe. Color it with strands and curls and ringlets, with fuzz and stubble and wild cowlicks. Color it with eumelanin and phenylanin, with freckles and tans and birthmarks. Color it with rashes and sunspots and scars, with albinism and vitiligo. Color my world chocolate, saffron, and natto and peach. Color it oat, wheat, cumin, pecan, and chickpea. Color it delicious. Color my world raw umber, burnt sienna, burnished copper, and dimpled bronze. Color it smooth amber and saturated coral. Color it pale chalk, glimmering sand, and fragile rust. Color it hard and strong, soft and malleable, cold and warm, and always beautiful. And then color my world with every chroma, every pigment of plant and plumage. Color it deep forest and shocking chartreuse green. Color it swaying poppy, slithering salamander, and fluttering cardinal red. Color it bold sunflower and tart citrus yellow. Color it ripe cut mango, darting goldfish, and roaring tiger orange. Color it resting robin's egg, scampering scarab, fluttering morpho wing, and waving water blue. Color it drooping wisteria, plump grape, and slow sea snail purple. And then color it striped and spotted and spiked and rounded. Color it subtle and brilliant. Color it pastel and iridescent. Color it contrasting and complementary. Color it microscopic and vast. Color it wisdom and passion. Color it intellect and faith. Color it action and thought. Color it kaleidoscopic. Color it a rainbow encircling the horizon. Color it everything. Color it now. But most of all, with every stroke, every movement, every touch, color it love. Okay. Well, I thank you very
Awesome.
much for the opportunity.
Awesome, brother. Awesome. And it's only fair, having asked you to do all this reading, I want to read one in response to you.
Oh, wonderful.
This is one of my early COVID poems. I thought you started off with a COVID poem, so I'm going to reply in a COVID poem. And like you, I understood both the horror of COVID, the dangers of COVID, the terrible impact of COVID, but also its other side. And I think it did have some very positive results. So this is called Down from the Trees. Honey baby, tell me please, since we're not so very long down from the trees, you scratch my back I'll scratch yours, up in the branches or down on deeply polished floors. We like reciprocal, you and me. Ever since we balanced on the limbs of a tree, whether out in the car or up in a tree, I'll groom you, you groom me. And one thing that's left for us, as a virus sets a fence between what we really feel and what we really mean, with you so far away on the other side of a glowing screen another day, we wave weakly. How I miss your sweet perfume and the many ways, darling, you decorate a room. The distant Mars, our love sealed up behind the glass screens untouched. Oh, honey baby, tell me, please, since we're really not that long down from the trees, I wish you were here to find and pluck off all my fleas. We're isolated, out of touch, and miles away my fingers clutch in disarray, my clothes askew. What I wouldn't give for you to have your seat beside me here, with your fingers searching my matted hair. Even to have you look with scorn at the clothes piled across the room I've worn. I'd even eat the toast you burn if I could beside you touch you and warmly turn down from the trees.
That was wonderful.
Thank you, my friend. It has been such a pleasure to visit with you. I thank you for spending some time.
Well, I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And yes, it's always great spending time with you.
Brother, you have a real good night, and I look forward to seeing you soon in some little Zoom cubicle.
Yeah, we'll look just about exactly like this. And I'll have the same background.
Well, you have a real good night, my friend. Thank you so much.
Okay. Peace out, brother.
Peace out, my friend.